everybody. My name is Lauren Makeyenko, and I'm Director of Education for Buffalo Audubon Society. This is my daughter Ruby, and today we're going to build some fairy houses and show you some of our tips and tricks on how to do that. Right now we're at Beaver Meadow Audubon Center, and we're at the area of the preserve called Fairy House Lane. So we're going to invite you in to join us. We're going to read a short story by an author named Tracy Kane about fairy houses, and then we're going to go ahead and build a couple houses and show you what to do. Come on. Okay, as I said, this story is called Fairy Houses, and it was written by an author named Tracy Kane. I happened to meet Tracy Kane a few years ago at a conference that I went to, and she told us all about this wonderful book. I've been using it ever since. This summer, my parents decided we should leave the city and spend a week on a small island off the coast of Maine. They said there was something special for me on the island, something I would really like, but they wouldn't tell me what it was until we got there. You want to read with me? Sure.
As soon as we got off the boat, I tried to guess. Is it the lighthouse? Those silly sandpipers on the beach? The seals? Our cottage? Later, when we went for a walk in the woods by our cottage, I discovered the secret my parents had been keeping.
Okay. You may build houses small and hidden for fairies, but please do not use living or artificial materials. Fairy houses, people had built small houses for fairies to live in.
I asked if I could build a fairy house. My dad said yes, as long as I followed the rules of the woods. I scouted out a place that would be just right for a fairy house. I chose a hollow at the base of an old oak tree and collected some twigs, some leaves, and pieces of bark to build with. I finished the inside with a floor of dry grass and made a roof with fallen leaves. I hoped the fairies would choose my house for a place to live in. The next morning, I couldn't wait to visit the woods again to see if anyone might be sleeping inside my house. When I bent down to look, I heard chipping. Was a fairy snoring?
Hey, you're not a fairy, I said. You're a cricket. The cricket hopped off into the bush full of bright red berries. Maybe the fairies would like some to eat. I thought, and I gathered a handful of berries from the ground and sprinkled them around my house. The following day, after visiting the lighthouse with my parents, I decided to check on my fairy house. Why don't you hold it? Just makes it easier. You hold it. There you go.
A pair of finches were carrying the last berries away in their beaks. Searching the ground for more berries, I came to a small stream. The sound of trickling water gave me an idea. I took some stones from my pack that I had found near the lighthouse and arranged them in a circle near my fairy house. Then I filled the circle with water from the stream. In case the fairies got thirsty, I wanted to take a bath.
Oh, so the birds came to the fairy house. How awesome is that? Anybody here? I whispered the next day. At first the house looked empty, and then I spied someone in the pool. I went to get a closer look at the frog as he bathed. Oops, I guess I got too close. Looks like the frog jumped out of the water. As the frog leaped away, I could hear other frogs singing out to him. I started to sing myself. As I got to work collecting acorns and pine cones, it was time to make some home improvements.
When I came back the next afternoon, I saw a squirrel nibbling on the nuts, but no fairy in sight. I just couldn't give up. I still hoped the fairy would visit my house. Maybe I needed a better entrance. In my pack were seashells and feathers my mom and I had found at the beach. I decorated the path leading up to the door. I thought about adding my shiny bracelet to one of the shells, hoping to catch a fairy's attention. But then I remembered the rules of the woods. The next morning, I got up very early when my parents were still asleep and tiptoed out of our cottage into the woods. This was the day we would be leaving the island, so I had one last chance to visit my fairy house.
A fog had rolled in off the ocean, covering the woods like a thick blanket. I could barely see. It was walking in a cloud. The trees seemed huge, and their branches looked like arms reaching out to grab me. Goosebumps started popping out of my arms and legs. Someone was watching me, I was sure. Should I turn around and run? But my fairy house was so close. It was then I heard footsteps and saw a large, dark shape moving towards my fairy house. My heart started thumping, and I jumped behind a tree to hide.
I caught my breath. It was a deer licking the salty seashells. I stood perfectly still as she made her way lazily through the woods and then vanished into the mist.
Oh, it was a deer. They can make a lot of noise sometimes. Exhausted, I sat down near my fairy house, watching, waiting, and wishing for fairies to appear. The quiet of the woods and the soft mist made me feel sleepy, and my eyelids felt heavy, and I tried not to fall asleep. Before long, the sun started breaking through the mist, and with it came a soft breeze.
Kristen, the breeze seemed to whisper in my ear. Kristen, wake up. We can only stay a moment. Struggling to open my eyes, I saw a bright beam of light and a tiny, smiling face.
Are the fairies there? We are the fairies who live in the spirits of all the plants and animals of these woods, a voice said. Of all the houses here, the animals have chosen yours to visit. You have treated the woods with care and respect. Look quickly, Kristen, for this is a moment of magic, when the fairies show themselves as a way of thanking you.
As the late morning sun started to break through the mist, light beams illuminated the fairies. They sparkled like jewels. They came so bright that I had to close my eyes.
When I opened my eyes, the fairies had changed into beautiful monarch butterflies. Butterflies fluttered around me like great orange clouds. Following me to the edge of the woods where the sun shone brightly.
I watched them dancing towards the light, higher and higher. Squinting into the warm golden day, I smiled and waved as the last butterfly disappeared into the sun. Shh! Over here. Turn this page to see some tips for building your own fairy house.
So that's the end of our story. And at the back of the book, it tells you about all different ways that you can build your own fairy house in different seasons and in different habitats, in summer and autumn. Even in winter, you can build a fairy house. You can build them in the woods, you can build them at the beach, you can build them in your own yard at home if you have just a little patch. You could even get a flower pot and build one in a flower pot if you'd like to. So now I'm going to show you what the materials are that we want to use to build a fairy house. So in order to build the most simple fairy house, you want to start with a stick that's shaped like the letter Y. You're going to take your stick, just like I did here. I have one already set up, and I set it against a tree trunk. Once you have it firmly in place, like that one, you're going to use materials to build up the sides, kind of like a tent almost of your fairy house. Ruby, what are some of your favorite materials to use?
Well, I use sticks for the base, and then because the sticks can't always fill in all the little holes, I put bark over it.
Awesome. You can build like a walkway, you can build fences. Sometimes we put out bowls for the fairies to have water and some food at the end. You want to gather all your materials at the beginning if you can, and then it just makes the building go much quicker. But you can always look around whatever area you are and gather your materials. Ruby and I like to gather our materials all throughout the year. And like the fairy house rules said in the book, you only want to use things that are non-living. So we're not picking flowers, we're not picking grasses, we're not picking plants to put on our fairy house. But if somebody like mowed the lawn recently and there's grass clippings, you could grab some dry grass to use for the inside. All sorts of things you can use. We found this really cool bark to use for maybe a sunroof or a window. So always be on the lookout for things that are not living, that are on the forest floor or on the ground that you might be able to use. I've collected some sticks here, and I'm just going to start to kind of put them off the side. And if they're not long enough, then you just find a place that it might be long enough to set along the side. You can put it into the ground if the ground is soft enough to keep it in place, or you can just set them, whatever works for you. So I'm just going to do a couple here to give you an idea.
If the stick is too long, you can break it, and if it's too thick, with parent supervision, you can cut it.
Once you've had your fairy house finished, and we don't have this one completely finished yet, you might want to put in something like a fence. So how to make a fence, I have one here, we call it a wattle fence. It's mostly kind of weaving with small sticks. You want to put in some posts into the ground. Usually about 5 or so would be the best. Often around trees you'll find nice long skinny sticks like this. And what you're going to do is take the stick on one side and you're just going to weave it back and forth between the sticks and then push it down to the ground. With the next stick that you bring over, let's see, this one looks good. You're going to start on the other side of that first one and weave it around the sticks so that it's the opposite of the first one. And then you're just going to keep building up, finding skinny sticks like this. And you have something that looks like a nice fence. The one thing that I recommend at the end, once you have everything built, is that sometimes you put out some food and some water, because we want to talk about basic needs: shelter, food, water. So we're going to put out a little bit of food and water, and I'm going to see if I can balance those right there on top. I like to put out some black sunflower seeds. So I put a couple little sunflower seeds in my acorn cap. And I put a little bit of water in the other bowl. And I usually bring a dropper because it's easier to do. When I do this program at the Nature Pilgrimage, I always bring a dropper because it's easy to pour your water right into your acorn cap. So one other thing I wanted to point out is that you don't have to start with a Y-shaped stick. Lots of kids like to build, and adults by the way, like to build shelters, and they can do it however they want to. As long as you find a sturdy place to put it, it can be freestanding. It can be against some bushes here, some other plants that are growing. And this is something that someone built here at Fairy House Lane. You are welcome to visit here at Beaver Meadow and visit Fairy House Lane and build your own fairy houses as well. So another way that you could build a house is for a toad, and we like to call those toad abodes. And usually if you think about a habitat where a toad likes to be, it's often in the damp forest ground. So we want to recreate something that's got a little bit of shelter, like I said before. You know, a nice little area. I found some wood with some moss growing on it that's nice and damp. We usually use water. You could use a spray bottle and you could get it nice and wet in there for them because you want it to be a little bit moist. And instead of putting out seeds, because toads are not seed eaters, you want to put out maybe some dried mealworms or something like that. So I have some dried mealworms that we have for some of our animals that we have here at Beaver Meadow. I'll put out a couple dried worms for some protein for those little toads. Get a nice shelter for the top, just some nice stones. You could make the stones a little bit damp too if you wanted to, with some water. Get it all nice and ready for a toad to move in. Okay, I think I've decided that my fairy house is done. What I did was I built it up with bark. You can see I used the little windows. I found a nice rock with some moss on it. I built another fence. Put a couple seats at the table and a couple little beds inside with some nice leaves so it was nice and soft. And I'm going to call that a day. I am satisfied with my fairy house. Sometimes kids like to write in the dirt or on a rock with another rock, "Welcome fairies." You never know what you're going to see. One of my favorite things about this program is that so many interesting ideas come up. And I'm going to share some pictures of some fairy houses that kids have built in the past at the Allegany Nature Pilgrimage.